everyone, welcome to our live session today. Today we're going to be just doing a few simple flavors with a very simple pie that a lot of us are familiar with, but I just wanted to touch base on this pie, especially for this time of year. Fall, very popular. It's just a classic pecan pie. We're going to do a different twist on it. We're going to add a little bit of chocolate to the pie. So it's basically very easy. You just need your pie dough, whichever pie dough you like. You can use flaky pie doughs. You see a lot of pie doughs made lately with a little bit of vodka in them, which adds to the flakiness. So you could use maybe half vodka for the hydration, the water in the pie dough. And keep in mind, pie doughs, they can be very basic, or you can really have a lot of fun with them. With the pecan pie, you could add some herbs to the pie dough itself. You could add maybe a little bit of rosemary or a little bit of thyme. You could even add a little bit of cinnamon. Some people add a little bit of ground nut too. You could add a little bit of ground pecan to reinforce the pecan flavor. So have fun with your pie doughs too. And for the filling, we're just going to be making a basic pecan pie filling. We're going to add some melted chocolate. It's going to go in the oven. It's going to come out delicious. So let's go ahead and start on the pie. So I just have a basic pie dough here. Like I said, you can have a lot of fun with these adding herbs and spices, and even something to consider, a little cayenne pepper. Not too much because you don't want the cayenne heat to overpower the chocolate, but it can definitely stand up to chocolate. So I recommend that too. Okay, so let's get our pie dough rolled out. And keep in mind, some people like a very thin pie crust. Some people like very thick. I usually go about 1/8 of an inch. Make sure you have plenty of flour on your board so there isn't any sticking. And we're just going to roll this out. You don't want too much. You don't want any drying. I have a little cracking starting on the edges. If that becomes a problem, what you can do is you can just put a little water on your hands and then kind of smooth that out. Sometimes that's just what it needs. So take your time on your pie crust. Make sure that you're rolling this out to about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want it too thick. I wouldn't go any more than 1/8 of an inch thick because it could just be too thick and maybe become doughy a little bit. Okay, so my dough is a little cold. It's taking me a little bit longer to roll it out, but you definitely want your dough chilled, especially if your oven is, especially if your kitchen is warm at all. You could have excessive sticking and tearing if your dough is not chilled all the way. So ideally, you want your dough to be very bendable. And what I mean by bendable is you can pick it up and you can bend it without it tearing or cracking. And that means it's so ideal and it's nicely chilled. Okay, so this is coming along nicely. I'm kind of rotating this as I roll it to kind of help keep the round shape. This is what you want to achieve. So I want this to be bigger than my pie pan because I'm going to be making a kind of a little bit of a scallop border. So I want enough dough where I can do that. So what I usually do, when I get a little close, I'll pull out my pie pan and just make sure that I've got some extra dough. So we're going to roll this just a little bit thinner, a little bit larger, and then we'll be ready to go. And does anyone have any questions on anything so far? Oh, okay. Okay. Keep in mind if you're not, if your dough is not too round, you can trim it. I like to use a pizza wheel for cutting. That works well. You could use a small knife too. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. I've got my thickness. I've got a pretty good round shape. So let's go ahead and put this in the pan. You want to make sure, I always check to make sure that there isn't any excess flour. Okay, so you can fold this over and put it in the pan like that, or you can roll it on your rolling pin. So let me show you that technique. All right, you can kind of roll it up, and then you can drop it in the pan like this. This is especially helpful if you have a delicate dough and you can't really fold it. And this dough is pretty resilient, so I'm able to move it around easily. It's not always the case with pie doughs. Okay, so do we have any questions on anything so far? Kind of want to tuck it in the pan. And this one, like I said, it's letting me move it around, which is kind of nice. I can make sure it's pretty even here in the pan. So what I like to do is I like to tuck my edges under, and then I'll come around and crimp them again. I'm just going to do some crimping in between my finger, and you can do a little bit of crimping, a little bit of texture with a spoon or even some tongs, or just a fork too. Or you could leave it plain. Some people like these plain. I like to do a little bit of crimping. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. Just about done with our basic pie shell. Pretty easy to make, and I'm just wondering if anyone's thinking of exploring any flavors with their dough. That would be kind of a fun thing to do. Oh, okay. All right, so crimping, I'm just taking my index finger and my thumb, and then my index finger on my other hand, pushing it in. So this is just a simple crimp. I like this because it gives it kind of a nice thick wave. But you can do any type of crimping that you want. You want to be careful. As you can see, this is pretty thick. So you want to be careful that you're not rolling this too thin, that you don't have your edge too thin, because it's going to bake fast. It's going to bake faster than the pie. And pecan pies take a little bit longer to bake than most pies. Okay, so we've got a basic pie shell, so let's go ahead and take a look at our filling. Okay, so your filling, you can mix it by hand and get rid of some of that flour. Okay, so like I said, you can mix this by hand or you can do it on the mixer. Super easy filling. You're just going to have a little bit of sugar. And I'm using white sugar. You can use brown sugar for a little bit more flavor. You're going to have a little bit of egg. We're going to kind of get this whisked a little bit to start it out. And then we're going to add some corn syrup. I'm using dark corn syrup. You can use light corn syrup if you want, or you can use a combination of both. If you choose to substitute brown sugar and using the dark corn syrup is going to give this a very nice rich molasses flavor and a beautiful color too. Okay, so in goes the dark corn syrup. You can use light if you like, if that's all that you have. You could even use a little bit of honey. What you could do is maybe use half honey and half corn syrup, and then you'll get that beautiful flavor from the honey too. So there's a lot of things that you can add to this basic little chocolate pie that can really help make it uniquely your own. You can add a little bit of bourbon. A lot of times I'll add some cinnamon in here as well. Cinnamon and pecan, the caramel, super beautiful flavor profile. Okay, so this is our basic pecan pie filling. As you can see, it's pretty sweet, it's pretty shiny, it's got a lot of sugar in it. The eggs are going to help stabilize this and firm it up, and we're going to have a lot of pecans in the pie, which is really going to cut on the sweetness. Trust me, it's not going to be too sweet at all. Okay, so let's go ahead. Next, we're going to add melted chocolate. You can add chocolate chips if you like, and even white chocolate too. I like the dark chocolate though. You want to make sure that your eggs are room temperature so this chocolate doesn't seize up once you start adding it. Okay. So like I said, I like to add mine melted. This is going to give this a pretty rich chocolatey look to it, and it smells absolutely delicious. Liqueurs, like I said, bourbon can be added at this point. Even a little Grand Marnier is nice too, a little orange liqueur. So have fun exploring some different twist on this too and kind of make it uniquely your own. Add a little bit of butter. It's going to add some flavor. And it gets mixed up. And see how easy this is to make? And we're going to be making a 9-inch pan, 9-inch pie today, but you can make individual pecan pies in muffin tins, or if you have individual molds. You can even make, you can make this in a cookie sheet. Be sure that it's about 1/2 inch deep or 1 inch deep cookie sheet, and then you can cut these into squares or bars too. So you can definitely have a lot of fun with this. Okay, so this is our filling. Let's kind of set this aside and let's go ahead and kind of finish off our pie filling. So I have some pecan halves and we're going to be filling the shell up about halfway. You can use a blend of other nuts too, even cashews. Put a couple cashews in here. That would be really nice. They're a different color. They have a different shape and they'll just add a different flavor and a little bit of texture. So you can see from the amount of pecans that I have in here that this is really going to cut on the sweet that you're seeing in the base filling. So I usually fill my pie shell up about a little halfway, depending on if you like more nuts or less nuts. You can do less or you could do a little bit more. So once this is incorporated, we're just pouring it over the top. And don't worry if you got some pecans poking through. Once this settles, they're all going to be covered. So what I do is I'll fill it up, I'll give it a chance to settle, and then I'm going to put it in the oven. Okay, this is it. It's our basic pecan pie. If a couple sticking out, I like to kind of press them in. Because what happens when this bakes, it's like the pecans almost kind of glaze on top. So what I'm going to do is add a little more room for filling. I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay. You're going to love this. It's going to make your kitchen smell absolutely delicious. Okay, so baking pecan pie. So you're going to bake this at, I usually bake mine at about 370, 375. If you have a convection oven, it's going to bake higher, so lower the temperature 25 degrees. And this pie is going to bake for in between 45 and 55 minutes. Depending on your oven, you have to keep an eye on it, and all ovens are going to bake differently. So you can tell if the pie is done. The crust is going to turn brown. If it starts becoming too brown and you don't want it quite so brown, you can protect it with a pie shield or even a little bit of foil. You can put the pie on a piece of foil and then just crimp the foil up to protect the crust. So what you're going to see is it's going to puff up. That's not unusual. When it cools, it's going to sink. You may even see a few cracks. That's not unusual at all. But you're going to want to look for a jiggle. You're going to shake the pie. And if it's not jiggling in a loose kind of liquidy type of a way, then you know it's done. So pecan pies can be deceiving because of the pecans on the top. It's a little hard to tell. So you can take the temperature, the internal temperature of the pie to be sure that it's done, and that would be 185 degrees. And the pecan pies, if they're not baked all the way, they're going to be runny from the eggs on the inside, and you really shouldn't be eating them unless they're set. But those are some tips on baking the pecan pie. And we have a question.
Do you ever use roasted pecans to give a richer flavor?
The question is, do you ever use roasted pecans? You can, but if you think about it, they're kind of roasting in the oven when they're in the pie, especially on the top here. So I recommend not using roasted pecans. What you can do is you can use that for your topping. You just don't want them to over roast. So maybe a light roasting would be okay, but you just don't want them to go too far because if you think about it, the pie is going to be in the oven for almost an hour or maybe an hour depending on your oven. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, so let's move on. I made a pie earlier, so let's go ahead and take a look at the baked pie. Okay, so this is the pecan pie that I baked earlier. You can see the crust is golden brown. I didn't cover it. You can cover it if you want it a little bit lighter. It's got a nice shine to it, and there was a little bit of cracking, but the pie settles a little bit, so you'll be just fine. So what I like to do with my pecan pies, and you don't have to do this, you can kind of leave it the way it is, but I like to brush my pies with a little bit of apricot glaze, and it really brings them to life. You'll see once I start brushing. But just like this is absolutely fine. You can even serve the pie like this. Everyone loves it. So I made some apricot glaze. I just took some apricot preserve, some warm water, and mixed it together until it kind of coated my spoon a little bit. And then I strained it. I strained out the pieces. And we have another question. The question is, can you use any other nuts? Absolutely. You can use a combination of nuts. Whichever nuts that you like will work well. Any of them will work well. And even this time of year, you could add a little bit of the pumpkin seed. You'll see those in the store. They have a little bit of a green color, so that's a nice blend too. I mentioned earlier cashews are nice, and any nut will work. So you could even do, you know, a nut variety. So yeah, definitely have fun with different nuts. Walnuts will work well too. Pecan pie is just, you know, a classic. So I wanted to touch base on the classic and add a little chocolate twist to it. I'm going to go ahead and glaze this on top, and you're going to see it's really going to come to life. And you don't have to do this. You can serve it the way it is. It's just really what you like. So I kind of like to bring the vibrance and the shininess, and to me it just kind of finishes it off. And this too is going to help with any dryness on top. It has a tendency to get a little bit dry on the top, you know, because it's been baking and you have sugars that got all crispy. So just keep that in mind. And this would, if you have, you know, a pastry case, this would look beautiful in the cake once it's been in the case once it's been shined up a little bit. So can you see what I mean about that coming to life a little bit, taking away from the dullness and the crust in the top too? So it kind of gives it a finishing look. And apricot glaze is very neutral. It's used oftentimes in the pastry kitchen. It's got flavor to it, but nothing that's going to overpower. You've got some strong nut flavor in here and strong chocolate flavor. So it's not going to take away. It's just going to add to the flavor. Be careful with this, not too much. As you can see, I'm careful that I don't have any puddles. That's something that you want to avoid. But this is the finished pecan pie. So you can serve it just like this, and it'll be delicious. You'll be sure to dazzle your guest, and you can also finish it off. I made a little bit of chocolate whipped cream. You can do any flavor of whipped cream. You can do cinnamon, you can do vanilla, you could do even coconut is nice flavor with this, orange as well. So I've got a little bit of chocolate whipped cream that I made earlier. I just took a little bit of heavy whipping cream and I sweetened it, and I just added some cocoa to it, and it's perfect topping for your pie. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on anything? Okay, so what you can do is just a little swirl on the top, kind of finishes it off. And you could put some chocolate curls, you could put some pecans, some have pecans, you can caramelize these, you can dip them in chocolate. It's really limitless what you can do. So definitely have fun with your pecan pie. Okay, I also have a few little sprinkles. You can add just a little bit of color too. coconut goes well. A little bit of toasted coconut on here is nice too. And let's go ahead and cut into the pie so we can see the inside of the pie. Put a little piece on a plate for us. Okay. So you're going to want a sharp knife. It's a little hard with the pecans on top to cut through these. Keep in mind, pies, you don't always get a super clean cut. You just kind of want to do the best that you can. First piece is oftentimes a little bit rough. Let's see if we can get this guy out of here and take a look at the inside. Okay, so this is our classic chocolate pecan pie. A little bit of sticking here. Rich chocolate. If you like a little bit less chocolate, you can put a little bit less. Like I said, you can do chocolate chips too, and just as many as you like, and the mini chocolate chips are beautiful as well. So we have a beautiful chocolate filling for our pecan pie. Looks absolutely delicious. You can put a few of these on the plate, and it has a nice finished look. And thanks so much for coming.